The Equality Court has been hearing arguments from Sanef in a case where it accuses the EFF of intimidating journalists. Well, Sanef says EFF leader Julius Malema and his followers sent tweets which targeted journalists in a way that constituted hate speech. Now, the South African National Editors Forum and 5 journalists have taken the EFF to court. They say the party has created an environment which has become toxic and hostile for journalists. Tani Smith, head of Policy Program and Media Monitoring Africa, joins us now to discuss what happened. Tani, you were part of this case as a friend of the court. Tell us what you told the court about the role of the media. What was your presentation there?
Well, essentially the role of the media as a profession, the role of journalists, is a very unique one. And you cannot have a functional democracy and a society which, democracy and values of democracy is enshrined if you don't have a free press. And to have a free press, we have to have an environment that's free from intimidation, from harassment, from threats. And that is really the foundation of the argument. And we sort of brought in global precedent. We brought in, some international examples around how the profession of journalism and media itself needs to be protected, and using those examples to sort of set the foundation of how the court approaches the arguments between Sanef and the EFF.
So what concerns you most about what Julius Malema had to say? I mean, I just want to remind our viewers about, where this stemmed from. At a protest this happened outside the Zondo Commission last year, where Julius Malema called on followers to deal decisively with certain reporters who he accused of defending white monopoly capital, and then went on to say, but we are not responsible for what our supporters say and do with this information.
Well, I think
scary stuff.
It is scary, and I think that there are a couple of issues that need to be unpacked. The one is that there has been ongoing rhetoric on social media and offline, for instance, the speech that's being referred to, where there are threats and harassing statements made towards journalists, and especially female journalists. I think that's important to bring in later. But the issue is that, first, there is this heightened tension coming from the EFF when engaging with journalists and media. I don't think anyone can sort of argue against that. But the other issue is that the EFF and their senior leadership are distancing themselves from the supporters and the supporter sentiments, and say, we can't validate who the supporters are or who the membership base is, and it's not us who say that. But I think what's important to remember is that politicians set examples, and if a specific political party is setting a precedent or not endorsing something, that is, that's agreeing.
What if people out there say to you, Tani, why are we playing into the EFF's hands? Some might say they're trying to stay relevant. We're playing into it. We're giving them the publicity they want. If we just left it, maybe it would go away.
Well, I think that we have seen very sort of immediate impact of their statements made on Twitter. I think it's had a real impact and effect on particular journalists. It's created an air of self-censorship when it comes to journalists, and direct threats from people who have sort of taken the statements quite seriously, direct threats to particular journalists. And that's not okay. It's one thing to say, okay, let's sort of just
it's not just about your work, it's gone beyond that and gone to the personal.
Exactly, and that action needs to be taken against.
And what of those who might say, you're a journalist, grow a pair, think about apartheid and people, who had to go through, journalists who went through what they did. So what if you're getting a death threat or two?
Well, I think journalism and the media profession already is a very tense, very stressful and environment and profession to work in. But it's around the critique and it's around the kind of harassment that we're getting. It's one thing to have the odd instance of a threat against a journalist or something personal come out. But what we're seeing from the EFF is direct critique of content and the way journalists are conducting themselves. We have mechanisms and regulatory bodies who politicians and political parties can go to lay their complaints. There are many other avenues to deal with these issues. You don't need to have this harassment and intimidation.
Is it just the EFF? I mean, for the longest time, we also had certain politicians from the ANC going the media's evil route.
It's not just the EFF. I think that if we look back, we can see many examples of threats of intimidation. The SABC is a perfect example of this as well. of the intimidation and threats to SABC journalists. That wasn't coming from the EFF.
The reign of terror, yes.
Exactly. And so I think what happens with the EFF is the virality and the amount of information and content being spewed on social media is
that people were getting messages on their phone. People,
from the
there were
EFF.
calls for people to be physically harmed because of it. Okay, all right, thanks very much. We'll see what happens after this and glean the lessons to be learned from this after this.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.